Considered to be one of the last major migrations of our ancient human ancestors around 10,000 years ago, the ancient Mesoamerican people developed agriculture around 3500 BCE. Focusing on the civilizations that developed in the modern area of the country Mexico, their staple grain crop was maize. Using a unique process called nixtamalization, the ancient Mesoamerican people prepared the maize using lime water, which kills most of the toxins present in the corn in addition to increasing its nutritional value and flavor. The mixing of maize and lime water results in a product called masa, which can then be used as dough in food. Maize that is processed without lime water can only result in cornmeal and cannot be used as a dough as it is too crumbly. It is important to note that lime water is not derived from the fruit lime, but rather is water with a solute calcium hydroxide. Calcium hydroxide, or lime, is an alkaline mineral. The mineral aids in the breakdown of hemicellulose in the cell walls and also acts as a binding agent for the proteins in the corn. The result is corn kernels that are soft and pliable, which can then be ground into masa. The food hominy is the result of nixtamalized corn kernels that have not been ground into masa. Many separate cultural identities manifested in Mesoamerica from the beginning of agriculture in the region until the conquest of the region by the Spaniards starting in 1519 and lasting until 1697. The three prominent civilizations established the cultural basis of modern-day Mexico. The first were the Olmec, who inhabited the region of the Gulf of Mexico coast above the Yucatan Peninsula from about 1500 to 400 BCE. The Maya inhabited most of the Yucatan Peninsula in the form of loosely connected city-states united by a common language. City-states under the Maya cultural umbrella lasted from the onset of agriculture until the Spanish acquisition in 1697. The final civilization to arise was the Aztec Empire, which was the only civilization in the region that developed a socio-political structure to rival the empires of the Old World. The Aztec Empire was located in central Mexico and lasted from about 1300 to 1519 Common Era, when the Spaniards conquered the region. All three cultures based their diets on maize, but the Maya development of masa quickly spread throughout the region as the basis of their cuisine. The Aztec culture saw the most distinctive cuisine developments in the region with a culmination of various foods such as chili peppers, gourds, beans and legumes, avocados, tomatoes, sweet potatoes, and chocolate. The only variety of meat available was turkey, however the main source of protein was derived from the beans. Spanish conquest of the region began with the Aztec Empire, which was located in central Mexico in 1519. The Aztec Empire included modern-day Mexico City and expanded into the regions originally inhabited by the Olmec civilization. The empire shared a soft border with the Maya, who occupied the Yucatan Peninsula. The last city-state in the Maya cultural sphere fell in 1697 to Spanish conquest, and the historical eras of the native people of Mesoamerica came to an end. The Spanish brought with them a multitude of biocultural influences, most of which were damaging to the long-standing cultures of the native inhabitants of the region. Like the European settlement of the North American East Coast in the modern-day United States of America, the Spanish infected the natives of the region with smallpox. The natives had no immunity to smallpox, as they had no cattle to derive immunity from. The Spanish were noticeably less diplomatic than other European countries who colonized the New World, as they opted for conquest rather than attempting diplomatic annexation or coexistence of the region. Significant portions of the native populations were killed by either disease or warfare, and native resentment was high. The Spanish cultural influences of native cuisine included the introduction of domesticated animals, such as cattle, pork, goat, and chicken, as well as dairy and rice. These influences led to the development of Mexican cuisine that is iconic of Mexican culture today. The Spanish also brought with them the religious influence of Catholicism. While the composition of the cuisine was not directly influenced from Catholicism, certain Catholic rituals began to be utilized, such as Mass and Communion. Relations between Mexico and America began in the 1830s with the Texas Revolution. Mexico had gained its independence from Spain in 1821 after an 11-year conflict which started in 1810 and was attempting to keep hold of its territories. What is now the state of Texas was originally a province of Mexico, but fought for its own sovereignty against the Mexican government. American settlers moving west at the time gave support to the native Texans in revolt against the oppressive Mexican regime. Conflict between the United States and Mexico culminated in the Mexican-American War, which lasted from 1846 to 1848 and settled with an American seize of Mexico City. Terms of the surrender was a national border along the Rio Grande River and the American annexation of New Mexico, Arizona, and California. Trade and immigration has since endured with Mexico, with temporary periods of turmoil within Mexico during the Mexican Revolution, which lasted from 1910 to 1920. The United States offered support to the interest of a unified and stable national government for Mexico and the prospects of trade. Many refugees of the Revolution fled to the United States, bringing with them their cultural roots. In the southwestern United States, many different cultural ideologies converged to create a culture unique to the area. The cultures of westward expanding white American settlers mixed with the unique cultural identity of Texan natives during the 1840s and 1850s. The expanding settlers arrived on the beliefs of manifest destiny and that it was their God-given duty to spread across the continent. Displaced Native Americans also arrived from the Trail of Tears during the 1830s to the 1850s. Another wave of westward migration of white Americans occurred after the American Civil War, as many were displaced after the destruction caused by the war. After the Mexican Revolution in the early 1900s, many refugees fled to the region and brought along the strong influences of Mexican culture and cuisine. It was not until the early 1980s that the common conception of Americanized Mexican cuisine took hold. During the initial influx of Mexican immigrants fleeing after the Mexican Revolution, America was focused on the rise of manufacturing during the 1920s. The economic collapse of the Great Depression during the 1930s and the fight against fascism in World War II during the 1940s. America spent the 1950s developing a national identity and spent the 1960s developing civil rights for its diverse base of citizens in addition to fighting prolonged wars in the southeast of Asia. The 1970s saw another period of economic turmoil as America was struggling with the energy crisis created by the OPEC oil embargo. It was not until the 1980s that Americans began to notice the monetary opportunities available in marketing food from other cultures. Other cultures that were exploited for economic gain include the various people of the Pacific, including the Chinese, the Taiwanese, the Thai, the Koreans, the Laotians, Filipinos, and Vietnamese. Also, various European cultures were exploited, such as the Italians, the French, and the Greeks. All have since become normalized with American variations of each cuisine. The specific changes to Mexican cuisine are numerous. Perhaps the most drastic change is the reliance on flour, otherwise known as wheat, tortillas, as opposed to the traditional reliance on corn tortillas. Wheat tortillas offer greater pliability and strength and are commonly used for large wraps such as burritos. Use of wheat tortillas originated along the Rio Grande River as a wrap better suited for the native herders that occupy the territory. Wheat tortillas used for tacos is an American marketing strategy as they are less brittle and therefore less messy, which makes them mobile in an American society that relies on fast food production. Tacos are a more traditional food in Mexican cuisine. However, the use of corn tortillas dates back to the early Mesoamerican roots. The food utilizing these early tortillas would not be described as a taco, but the tortillas would often be used to hold various fillings or used as an accessory to the main dish. The term taco to describe the folded corn tortillas layered with fillings is suspected to have originated during the late 1800s in reference to snack-type foods miners used. The use of the term taco was originally in reference to small charges of gunpowder folded in paper used in the mines during the 1700s. Tamales are the oldest of Mexican staples dating back to the Maya. Tamales consist of masa, with or without fillings, wrapped in banana leaves and boiled in a seasoned sauce. The masa can consist of different fillings depending on what was regionally available. Meat in the time before Spanish colonization, if used at all, was usually turkey, but could also be iguana, venison, or fish if a coastal region. Squash, beans, and mushrooms were also used as fillings. After Spanish colonization, meats used consisted of beef, chicken, pork, and mutton. The Spanish also introduced fillings such as cheese and rice. American changes not only occurred in the production and preparation of food, but also in the proportion, sizes, and time the dishes are served. Traditional Mexican days consist of a main meal called comida, which is the midday meal Americans would refer to as lunch. It is the largest meal of the day and consists of an initial serving of soup followed by a meat dish accompanied with beans and tortillas. Leftovers would be consumed in the evening along with tacos or enchiladas to supplement. Enchiladas traditionally consisted of rolled corn tortillas around fillings, which was then baked and topped with a chili-based sauce. Tacos traditionally consisted of a main filler of meat or beans topped with vegetables like tomatoes and mushrooms and cheese. It is important to note that the use of traditional refers to the period after Spanish colonization when the cultures merged to create a national identity. Mexican restaurants in America utilize combinations of traditional Mexican foods to create American-sized proportions. Also, instead of being consumed midday, Americans typically reserve the main meal for the evening. This leads to more food than what was consumed in traditional Mexican meals, as well as combinations that were not originally used, such as burritos and tacos and enchiladas. Americans have also devised their own food that are akin to Mexican tradition, such as nachos, fajitas, and chimichangas. While the mixing of the cultures is not necessarily a bad thing, the exploitation for profit and mischaracterization of source culture is condemnable. The Hispanic population of the southwestern United States was shown to have a health status rating somewhere between that of white and black Americans with similar socioeconomic backgrounds, leaning more towards that of whites. This was measured on key indicators such as infant mortality, life expectancy, cardiovascular disease, and cancer. However, obesity and diabetes were shown to be prevalent in the Hispanic population, which is likely attributed to their diet and genetic heredity. Researchers compared the genetic component to that of other Native American populations who show similar rates of obesity and diabetes. Another team of researchers examined a protective effect attributed to a traditional Mexican maize-based diet in model organisms. Metabolic syndrome was induced in rats by giving them a 30% sucrose solution for an extended period of time. Blood tests revealed increased resistance to the effects of the 30% sucrose solution in rats who were fed a maize-based diet compared to rats fed standard pellets and water. The American adaptation of Mexican cuisine, particularly the reduced use of maize-based traditional diet, nullifies the positive effects of consuming maize. The rise of obesity in the southwestern United States Hispanic population, as well as the United States in general, can likely be attributed to less nutritional variance of traditional diets and an increase in portion sizes. The exploitation of the traditional Mexican cuisine for monetary gain has led to said attributes, and the misrepresentation of Mexican culture and cuisine add insult to injury. A paradigm shift in the United States would be necessary to halt the exploitation of other cultures and give rise to the celebration of traditional cultures by Americans and cultural immigrants alike.